Revitalize your brand and accelerate your impact with Eddie and Erica at Elevate One Consulting. Experts in organizational development, digital marketing, and much more. From leadership coaching to creating unforgettable digital experiences, we've got you covered. Visit elevateoneconsulting.com today. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Welcome, everyone, to The Unbroken Place, a podcast where it begins and ends with empathy. I'm your host, Eddie Paul Thomas, and on this episode, I have the pleasure of introducing you to one of the most gifted people in the Midwest. Performance in theater and music was her everything for 20 years, and though performance is still a big part of her life, it is no longer the center of her life. I'm speaking of singer, actress, and educator, Britt Ezio. She's not only a singer and actress, but she is also a trauma-informed meditation, somatics, and art educator. She develops programming, workshops, and works one-on-ones with folks, assisting individuals from diverse backgrounds and abilities in strengthening their inner guidance system through the use of these modalities. She believes, and the research on the topic would support her beliefs, that engaging with the language of arts, body, and breath in collective settings has the potential to foster compassion and bring us back to a sense of belonging within ourselves, each other, and the natural world. You can find her offerings and projects in spaces all over Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh region, and online with Sovereign Creative Wellness, Awaken Pittsburgh, and City Theater. So, without further ado, sit back and enjoy the conversation. Hey, Britt, thank you so much for joining us on The Unbroken Place, and just really appreciate having you and your experience on the show today.
Thanks, Eddie. I'm grateful to be here.
Well, thank you. I want to get us started by asking a question that I'm going to start asking everyone, which is, what does empathy mean to you?
Empathy, to me, means creating space to remain connected to each other's humanity.
Yeah. And, looking at the things you're doing in your career, I know that everything you're doing with Sovereign Creative Wellness is amazing for the community. I'm just wondering, how does your background in musical theater influence your approach towards teaching empathy through arts?
Storytelling. I'll just start there. We build so many agreements and connection and separation and through storytelling. So whenever I get to hear the complexity or the nuance of someone's story, it inevitably brings me closer to their humanity, right? And art and theater and storytelling, we hear it all the time, right? Art mirrors life, and life mirrors art, and storytelling, opens us up to perspectives that maybe we weren't considering before, and also building stories together, right? Collaborating in a theater setting and a storytelling setting is that has just been such a profound building block to who I am. I've grown up doing theater. I went to school for theater, and the amount of collaboration that I have engaged in throughout my theater career is immense. And coming into a space to collaborate, to tell a story, it's like I'm coming in with what I have, and you're coming in with what you have, and we're not even like melding those things, but we're creating something completely new based on what we're bringing into the space.
That's beautiful. I would imagine there's a certain level of improv in what you do. Obviously, you have a script, but there's a certain level of improvisation which requires you to feed off of the energy that others are giving as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, good and honest acting is truly listening and responding, right? Really listening to what is being said and then responding honestly or authentically.
Yeah.
While I know what's coming in the script, of course, there is always space for curiosity and discovery.
Mhm.
And if I'm already set in the ways that I think I'm going to respond and don't leave room for that, uh, yeah, curiosity or organic, um, yeah, new opportunities within the scene or the show or whatever, um, then you kind of just you stop the creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you share an example of how empathy is both a personal and communal journey in your work? I know that there's some mention of that on your website. I'm just curious. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, actually, I'll start here. I think we hear a lot of narratives around, you can't love other people if you don't love yourself, or you can't care for other people in the way that, if you don't care deeply for yourself. And while I think that there's a lot of truth to that, I also have learned how to love and care for myself better
Mm.
by caring and connecting with community in the ways that I care for other people. Um, and I will also say that for a long time, I thought that empathy was to um, enmesh with other people and to kind of uh, abandon my own boundaries. And I thought that
Mm.
enmeshing with other people and yeah, doing that, I thought that was empathy. And I thought
Right.
that if I put my needs and my self on the back burner, that is really what true empathy meant. And actually enmeshing with other people's energy and trying to save people and not giving people agency over their own experience, and
Mhm.
like jumping in, with what you think that people need. That's not empathy at all. So, yeah, I've learned so much about that in community spaces, right? Holding really true to my needs and caring for myself while holding empowered boundaries and also keeping an open heart and caring for community.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so important. I'm glad you touched on that. Um, I first thought of something along those lines from the great psychologist Janet Jackson. When I was in college, she had this little break in between songs, and she said, "How empty of me to be so full of you."
Mm.
And I thought, whoa, like, I'm in my 20s. That's the first time I really thought about that, in terms of when we try to extend empathy to others, there has to be some sort of balance in that practice. So yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, and so much of the work that you do, um, you unfortunately have to deal with, and I guess unfortunately is the wrong word. I think it's fortunate for someone trained like you to deal with trauma. So I'm curious. Um, how do the trauma informed mindfulness practices facilitate deeper understanding and empathy towards others' experiences?
Mhm. Yeah, the trauma informed training has, I mean, it's just shifted the way I relate in facilitating, educating, and also in my personal relationships. And I guess the understanding that I can create a safer space in every way that I can, right? Create these parameters or this container so that everyone feels as safe as possible. And also understanding that it's also participants' responsibility to find safety within themselves. So, you know, yeah. knowing that I can set up all these things and that someone still might not feel safe in the space depending on their own trauma or their own experience. And in general, trauma informed education and mindfulness practices have just taught me to give people choice, to give myself choice.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, the systems that we're under, a lot of choice is taken away. And so much of my work is helping people and myself constantly, it's always in tandem, remember
Yeah.
that where they have agency, where they have choice, whether that's within their bodies, whether that's in relationship and communication, whether that's in, connecting with the earth, um, and really asking, what you need moment to moment, and honoring that.
Yeah.
Um, I hope that answers the question. I kind of
I,
went.
I think it does. I think it does. There's a part of your work that I'm fascinated about. It's something that I've known, but I didn't have the verbiage for it. Working with various communities, whether it be underserved youth, children who are abused, or the persons experiencing homelessness, is that a lot of that trauma is experienced in the body. And I know that what you experience or what you work with in some of the populations that you serve is called somatic practices. So before jumping into somatic practices, if you could kind of break down what somatic means, just so that the audience understands what somatic is, and then maybe discuss how somatic practices contribute to cultivating self empathy, and recognizing the needs of the body.
Mhm. Yeah, so somatics at a base level is the body, the soma, right? Understanding and attuning to the subtle and sometimes larger movement within the body, right? So working with the muscles, working with creating space in the body so that things that are stuck, dis-ease that is stuck, can move through. Um, and I will just say that particularly in the Western world, we are very, we're very separated in so many ways, right? This is colonization, right? Colonization works to separate all things, and we separate the mind and the body. And understanding that the mind and the body are always communicating together, always in um, constant collaboration. And so, um, somatics is really just being in deeper conversation and active participation with the body. And when it comes to trauma, right, trauma does get stuck in the body. It gets stuck in the muscles, it gets stuck in the bones, it gets stuck in the cells, it gets stuck in the blood, it gets stuck in the fascia, right? And so um, finding the ways to open up the channels or the rivers of the body so that this stagnancy or this stuckness or this dis-ease can actually move out of the body. Trauma, and I keep saying dis-ease because that's what it is, right? Dis-ease, right? We're not at ease. Something is holding really, really tight, and it all gets truncated in the center of the body. So working um, with the nervous system and creating spaciousness in the nervous system and through the body helps move that dis-ease through. When it comes to empathy, right? It just always comes back to honoring ourselves and honoring what we need, and being in deeper conversation with what we need. And a lot of the times the body is left out of that conversation, and the body has so much wisdom, so much intuitive knowing. And whenever we are in deeper conversation with that wisdom, we can we can tend to ourselves better, more lovingly, and more empathetically.
That's beautiful, Britt. And I think it just provides so much more clarity on why what you do with Sovereign Creative Wellness LLC is so important. And you partner also, you provide services with Awaken Pittsburgh as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious what role empathy, plays in your curriculum development and program delivery with Awaken Pittsburgh.
I mean, it's the main piece of that work.
Mm-hmm.
Working with Awaken Pittsburgh has opened up my life in ways that I didn't know that that it, I didn't know that I was going to engage in. I have worked with really surrendering expectation, because every population that I work with is vastly different. While a lot of the challenges are very similar, and like, in terms of a through line at the root, a lot of things are very similar. But the way that comes out, and the way that people express, and the way that people relate, and the particular unique struggles that people go through, it's different every single time. So really meeting people moment to moment where they are. And even though I will teach the same programs over and over, so it kind of goes back to that theater storytelling piece, spontaneity, curiosity piece of,
Mm-hmm.
how can I, even though I've done this program before, or I've taught these lessons or this content before, how can this now be adapted to this specific population, and how can I meet people where they are, and really provide what they need in
Yeah.
the experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so great. I love that you provided me with a perfect segue almost, in that meeting people where they are isn't just figurative for you. One of the things that stood out to me when we've spoken in the past, and just looking at where you serve in the community, practices that revolve around empathy and meditation, mindfulness, things of that sort. Realistically, we're set for one particular type of people, and it was for those who could afford it. And just being blunt, it was for white women. However, what I've seen from your practice, what I've seen from your work with Awaken Pittsburgh, it's actually serving those who aren't normally able to afford or even take time to understand what this is. And so, in your work, I'm curious, what ways do you ensure that your empathy focused practices are inclusive and accessible to diverse communities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I will say I can speak to that in terms of my own business first. Just in terms of, like, financially, it is really important for me that people have options financially um, to engage with these practices. So just from like a base level, like providing payment plan options and providing sliding scale options to again meet people where they are is really important. In terms of accessibility, I work really closely with the neurodivergent and disabled communities,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and letting people know that this is not something that's outside of them, right? Oftentimes when we hear or listen or study practices like this, it's a lot of people have the idea that it's like, okay, I have to carve out an hour a day to incorporate these things into my everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
My hope in terms of accessibility is to help people understand that all of these things are right here. You don't have to go very far. And I work with, like, I work one-on-one with mothers, right? And so in my sessions with them, them feeling like they can't have their newborn child with them, right? That is defeating the purpose, right? Can we incorporate a session where you have your child there and we can actually meet that moment, and utilize these practices wherever you are, right? When you're in the car, when you're in relationship and having a difficult conversation with someone, when you're transitioning from work to home, things like that. So accessibility is, just helping people understand that it's not this like high level thing. This should be part of our everyday ecosystem of our lives.
At the Say Something Studios division of Elevate One Consulting, we don't just build websites, we craft unforgettable digital experiences. Imagine a place where design, development, UX, SEO, and management harmonize to elevate your brand to unprecedented exposure. A place where your website is not just seen, but felt, experienced, and remembered. Our expert team, equipped with unparalleled marketing insight, turns the everyday task of website design and management into a seamless, empowering journey. With Elevate One, you're not just launching a website, you're embarking on a transformative business adventure. We meticulously design every aspect, from intuitive navigation to stunning graphics, ensuring your digital space authentically represents your business ethos. Ready to transform your online presence into a thriving digital masterpiece? Visit us now at www.elevateoneconsulting.com and start your journey to digital excellence. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. Yeah. That's wonderful. I remember working for an organization that works specifically with first-time pregnant mothers, and it was wonderful. Grant-funded program that was trying to help them overcome so many different obstacles in their way. And part of that was, hey, I had this child. I'm a first-time pregnant mother considered at risk. How can I do anything if I'm not allowed to bring my child to a given practice or, appointment or what have you? Mm-hmm. And so to understand that that's something that you incorporate to make sure, just to be mindful of the fact that that can be, an obstacle to overcome is huge. So I really appreciate that. And I love the thoughtfulness and putting something like that together for the community. I'm curious, and I read this on your website, and you'll have to forgive me if I'm saying it incorrectly, but I would love for you to explain to our listeners how the integrative community therapy model influences your understanding of empathy and group dynamics when you're serving such a diverse population.
Mm-hmm. It is a model that was created by a Brazilian man, Adalberto Barreto, who it was originally created to bring to the folks that lived in the favelas, the shanty towns in Brazil, to help them build emotional and communal resources separate from the systems that they were a part of, government, education, things like that. And I just recently started utilizing this particular model. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting. And we were kind of warned in our training, that it's going to be interesting using this in the United States. There's a lot of directions that I could go here because it's very fresh for me, because I actually just used it this past weekend. And it is a beautiful model. And I also will say that a huge piece of it is speaking about our own experience, right? Speaking from the I, speaking from like our own lives and our own experience. And I have found that in the United States, it is difficult for people to do that. we speak in, we align with ideology, right? And so speaking to our own direct experience and speaking about our own internal system is difficult for people. That is what I have found. And once we get there, people are really able to actually build those resources together. So, in terms of empathy, right? People want to. I'll speak from the I. I'll do it myself here. I often want to, right? That's a perfect example. I was just doing it, right? I was speaking in these kind of general, larger narratives instead of bringing it back to my own experience. I oftentimes will want to distract myself from my own experience in community with people because I don't want to be witnessed, or I feel shame, or I feel scared to be vulnerable, right? And so ICT is a methodology, that a conversational structure methodology that really helps people be witnessed and seen, and that can be really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, being gentle with myself and with other people as I'm bringing, as I'm starting to explore this methodology with folks. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. We'll let people email in and
Yeah, I'm a
respond on
tangent.
social.
I can go on tangents, so feel free to
That's
pull me back in.
that's what we're here for. Tangents end up turning into stories, and people can relate to stories. So that works well for me, and definitely for our listeners. I'm thinking about, again, just all of the various practices that you utilize with the community, and would love to hear you discuss some of the challenges and rewards of teaching empathy. And I don't know if I would say more of a culture, in a culture that often prioritizes individual success over the collective well-being.
Mm-hmm. I will say I have been incredibly lucky, blessed, whatever word you want to say, that most people that come into the spaces that I teach are like deeply, deeply compassionate people. Um, I will say that, sometimes I have to work with folks that are like mandated to be in the spaces that I work in. That's when it gets really challenging, because if I am harping on, for example, I work with educators around trauma-informed education and mindfulness. A lot of the conversation can be about the people that we serve's trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily giving all the space because there's not enough time, or I have to follow the curriculum, or whatever the case is, to really give space for people to speak to their own experience with trauma or discomfort or challenges in life. And so if we're constantly talking to people about, you have to serve in this way, right? You have to pay attention to the people that you serve, which is true, and not giving people the space to really unravel their own experience and relate to their own inner selves, right? That has just been a challenge. And that's a deeper conversation around curriculum building and what serves best. And so I've met a lot of resistance of like, I don't want to talk about this because I don't want to talk about this, or I know what my students I know what my students face. And just a lot of defensiveness around being told that we have to change and adapt and hold space and maybe in a more empowered way. yeah, that has been a challenge. And I will say that I have at this point kind of created a boundary for myself that I really only want to teach people that want to be there, um, that have a choice, right? Because when it comes to trauma informed education, there's this paradox that lives there of, if people are forced to be there, I'm like, I'm teaching you to give your students choice, but you don't have a choice to be here right now.
Right.
And that doesn't sit well with me. And I can be as transparent, or as real, try to be as real with them as possible. But at the end of the day, if they don't want to be there and they're being forced to be there, it's contradictory to what we're even trying to accomplish.
Right. Right. It almost goes to a question of culture of the organization that you're serving, in that people are mandated to be there who don't want to be there, and then you become this antagonist before you open, before you say your first words. So
I don't even have a chance,
it,
which is
it,
not their fault necessarily.
yeah, that can certainly be a challenge for sure. What would you say are some of the rewards or um, the positives that you've experienced in doing something like that?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's been an immense amount of rewards. Seeing people like have light bulb moments of
Mm-hmm.
around connecting with themselves, or connecting with their humanity and the humanity of other people. There is truly nothing like that for me to witness that. And I often say, I'm just creating the container, I'm just creating the space. You get out of this what you put into this. And so watching people step in with a deep resolve to learn and grow and heal and develop is just it's just beautiful to see. And you can see that ripple effect. And I will have people reach out to me years later and be like, this one tiny seed that you planted, right, has stuck with me. And something that's so mundane or so yeah, just like not really significant to me necessarily, trusting that um yeah, people will receive what they need to receive. And yeah, that's just, I can't even put into words how
Mm.
rewarding that is.
That's That's wonderful. I've certainly had that experience as well, whether it's been working with clients or um, every once in a while having one of my old players send me a message. Hey, that thing you told me, I've been utilizing it for years. Thank you so much. Like that kind of stuff just lets you know that it was all worth it. All of the time that you spent. Um, it's wonderful. The I'm curious, as you begin to work with, and we're not necessarily going back to the struggles or the challenging part, but I just want to ask this question in general, I guess. Um, what strategies do you recommend for individuals struggling to empathize with themselves, especially in the context of self-criticism or even self-neglect?
You know, the the work that I do, because I kind of have to enter into this question from a one-on-one lens, because um we get the furthest whenever I can really connect with people heart to heart, one to one, and really understand kind of the complexity of their experience. And I definitely don't have like a one size fits all kind of answer to this. But my one-on-one container that I use for people, my one-on-one program is called Tending to the Roots. And
Mhm.
so when you can take the time to investigate kind of where those narratives are coming from is important. Understanding what is yours and what is not yours. Right? What narratives are yours, what narratives are not yours, whether that's been placed on you by family or society, or um, whatever the case is there. Um, and I will also say that tending to the nervous system working with the nervous system is a huge piece of my work.
Yeah.
And when we can create spaciousness and really tend to our nervous system states, right? Because if we're in a hyper aroused place, the thoughts will just be rampant and looping. So finding ways to disrupt that excess energy by grounding your system and intentionally engaging with your system, that is really important. I will say that I think sometimes, and I thought this for a long time, because I struggled with depression for a very, very long time, that I thought one day I was just going to wake up and feel better and whole and complete and not have those narratives. But my main piece of advice is that we have to take an active part in our healing.
Yeah.
We're not just going to wake up one day feeling better. It has to be an everyday, consistent experience of and practice of empowering ourselves and being kind to ourselves and being compassionate to ourselves. The number one piece of mindfulness work and meditation work is compassion for self and others.
Yeah.
So that active participation in shifting those narratives for ourselves, that's the main piece of advice that I would give.
Yeah. Outstanding. What in your practice and service to others, what are some of the misconceptions that you found about empathy that you encounter in your work, and how would you address them?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what I said before around the enmeshing, right? We see so much about compassion fatigue and burnout and empathy is, well, I'll just say, like, the common misconception is that we have to abandon ourselves in order to serve and help other people.
Right.
That is not empathy at all. And tending to ourselves and really taking care of ourselves, that inevitably gives other people permission to do the same for themselves. If you're embodying that, and it's an everyday journey, believe me, I have not mastered this, but it's so I think, yeah, just that common misconception is very, it's very clear to me that with the educators I work with, helping professionals that I work with, moms that I work with, any person of service, right? The people that are like the most of service are like the most hard on themselves, which is interesting. And so just understanding that the energy of giving and receiving is born of the same fruit. It is a synergistic collaboration of giving and receiving and giving and receiving. And so receiving is also an act of empathy too. It's not just giving and giving and giving and pouring out, but really allowing ourselves to be held, that's a part of that synergy. Yeah.
I think back to a little bit earlier in our conversation where we were talking about the stories, how impactful stories are for people when they hear them, to dig a little deeper, change perspectives, things of that sort. I was wanting you to share a personal story, if you will, where empathy either received or extended profoundly affected you or someone you worked with. And obviously don't share names or anything like that, but just, something that will give our listeners something to think about as we wrap up.
There are so many, right? I feel like empathy is just like so many people want to give.
Yeah.
And this is what's coming up. There are so many that I could choose from, but I had a one-on-one client that is just an incredible human being, just a beautiful human being, and came to me to help, really work with her nervous system and heal her nervous system. And something that I'm always open to doing with people in terms of payment is for part of the payment be an exchange of some sort.
Yeah.
And a big piece of her skills is gardening. And one of my biggest dreams is to have an epic food garden. I want to grow all my own food one day. And yeah, part of our exchange is her giving me gardening lessons, because she's incredible at it. And this is coming up for me because this is a clear example of this reciprocal synergistic exchange of empathy and care and time and skills.
Yeah.
I again, this is not to pat myself on the back. This is just what it is. It's rewarding to give someone an opportunity to share their skills with me, and I also need the skills.
Right.
I need to learn from them. So, and so, the time and energy that she has put into like crafting the modules for me and things like that, it's just beautiful, and it's I will say too that when I work one-on-one with people, I keep it in a 3-month container, because I hope that people don't have to depend on me. People will gain the skills and build their toolbox, and then they can, be on their way.
Right.
Still maintain that connection. But just like watching her light up with her skills and be able to share and give to me in that way. It's just, I don't know, that collaboration is that's the best thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And for listeners, it's all over her face what it meant to her. So if you can't see it, make sure to check it out on YouTube, and it's evident. That's wonderful, Britt. So for listeners who want to learn more about what you're doing and how to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they look? Where can they find you?
Yeah, my website, www.brittanydorazio.com, BrittanyBorazio. And I do post a ton of my offerings and practices and things on Instagram.
Okay.
Sovereign Creative Wellness. And
is that the handle at
Yep.
Sovereign? Okay, gotcha.
Yep, at Sovereign Creative Wellness.
Okay.
And I have a lot of online opportunities coming up, to programs coming up, Awaken Pittsburgh, and I teach in Pittsburgh all around Pittsburgh, but I teach often at a place called the Ceremonial Moon Studio. That's where I provide a lot of offerings. And I will also say that I'm coming out with 2 creative projects this year. So keep an eye out for that.
Outstanding.
Yeah, I'm releasing my EP and I'm releasing a poetry book. So
yes.
And that's an integral part of who I am and what I offer.
Very cool. Very cool. For, I guess, kind of a double question. Sorry, I thought I was letting you off the hook, but not quite yet. Some of our listeners that have messaged me on social media or through WhatsApp are overseas. So when they're listening, do you have any online offerings, things that they could tune in and watch or participate with?
Yeah, so I think that this episode will probably come out after this next program starts, but I'm offering a nervous system course coming up in April, and I will continue to be offering things online. I have just found that it is more accessible for so many people. And I always give the option, if you can't make live sessions, I always record the sessions. You'll receive them to your inbox.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, there will continue to be plenty of online opportunities. And, eventually recorded programs that you can just download.
Things like that. Yeah. That continued effort to meet people where they are. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, everyone, we are obviously blessed to have Britt on the show today. So grateful that you were able to stop by and share your knowledge and encouraging words for everyone. In the show notes, we will have everything. We'll connect offline, Britt, and list out some resources for people to check out. And then obviously ways to connect with you and what you're doing. But just want to let you know, we're so grateful to have you on today.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for this conversation, and thank you for all of the meaningful ways that you're contributing to the world, Eddie.
Thank you. Thank you. The Unbroken Place podcast is presented by Elevate One Consulting. The show was produced by Say Something Studios. Learn more about both of these in the show notes. The show's music is performed by Little Glass Men and Captive Portal. We want to thank you for being a part of the Unbroken Place community. Look for an ongoing conversation on Instagram and Facebook at the handle @UnbrokenPlace. You can also find some helpful resources at eddiepaulthomas.com. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter called OK on Second Thought on LinkedIn. Until next time, one love.
In a world where thriving teams, engaged managers, and ethical leaders are the backbone of successful business, how do entrepreneurs set the stage for human flourishing while scaling up? The answer is ongoing effort, leadership, and intentional communication. At Elevate One Consulting, Dr. Erica Garcia Thomas and Eddie Paul Thomas are helping to turn the tide. With a blend of evidence-based practices, interactive teaching, and dynamic public speaking, they're not just consultants, but revolutionaries in improving company health, growth results, and employee engagement. Specializing in revitalizing brands, coaching leaders, and accelerating projects, Elevate One Consulting offers a comprehensive suite of business services designed to enhance team leadership and customer experience. Whether advising executives, guiding digital marketing strategies, or transforming organizational culture, they're here to elevate your business to the next level. Don't settle for a business that survives. Ensure that it thrives. Visit www.elevateoneconsulting.com. ELEVATE 1consulting.com today and take the first step towards creating an environment where everyone flourishes. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate.
Say Something Studios.